The presidential election in the U.S. is only days away. For reaction and analysis of the closing arguments, we're joined by political commentator and chair of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Matt, thanks for being here. I want to get your take on the overall numbers among swing state voters. Trump seems to be leading in the Sun Belt, while Harris has a slight lead further north. Everything is coming down to Pennsylvania, which is considered too close to call. Matt, how do you think Pennsylvania goes? Trump has spent a lot of time over the last few days and months in that region.
Yeah, they have to ask themselves, both campaigns have to ask themselves, is there anything more they can do in Pennsylvania to make a difference? After a while, it gets to be diminishing returns with so many ads and so many visits. The number one reason I think Donald Trump will win Pennsylvania is because he doesn't have Scranton Joe, lunchbox or lunch bucket Joe. Joe Biden grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He always had a connection to that state. And Kamala Harris has the opposite. I think she turns a lot of those blue-collar Democrat working man and women votes off. And I think that's why Donald Trump will win.
Matt, let's talk about these closing arguments. I covered the Madison Square Garden event where it was estimated that some 100,000 people swarmed Midtown Manhattan. Only 20,000 could get into the garden. The energy and enthusiasm of that rally was incredible, but it was overshadowed by that comedian's line about Puerto Rico 5 hours before Trump appeared. Then President Biden called Trump supporters garbage on a Zoom call, provoking this response from Trump. Like the McDonald's drop-by, this dominated the news cycle, Matt. Is this connecting with independents and undecided voters?
Yeah, Raymond, I think those are two iconic moments. Trump working the counter at McDonald's, which, by the way, was a secret fantasy of his. We all know this. He loves their French fries and everything else. And then donning that neon vest and getting in the garbage truck. But, Raymond, before we started talking, I just went through in my head. They called us a basket of deplorables. They said, you ain't black. They called Hispanics tacos. You're an extreme MAGA Republican. You're going to make us sick. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're an election denier. You're an insurrectionist. You're a Nazi. You're garbage. And now today, you're not strong or smart if you're a woman supporting Donald Trump. I mean, how are they going to get to the White House by insulting almost every American who's going to vote?
Matt, the Harris campaign seems to be struggling to humanize and still introduce their candidate. What did you make of Kamala's closing argument at the Ellipse earlier this week? I mean, this was her big closer. Did the Biden Zoom call kill it?
Yeah, it did. I think you have to ask yourself psychologically if Joe Biden even is trying to help her win, because I think his feelings are very hurt that they're not using him at all. And I think for Democrats, they're so in their own heads, you might say, or they're in the bubble where everybody is still so worked up about January 6th or that our democracy is on the line. I actually think for the American people, this is very discordant with what they care about. Both Democrats and Republicans, they're more practical. They don't want all these kids going overseas to conflicts they don't understand. They want that border closed. They don't like the crime that's come from the open border. But they want to be able to buy food, Raymond. Everyone's talking about how expensive food is and how expensive gas is and how home heating now, it was going to the winter months, is going through the roof. This is what the American people are worried about. They're not worried about our democracy. They're worried about our economy.
Matt, what do you make of these major newspapers, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, declining to endorse either candidate? How significant is this, and what does it tell you?
Well, both papers, the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post, were bought by really successful entrepreneurs, billionaires. And I think it tells us what a businessman looking at this presidential race thinks, which is Kamala's not going to win. And so why be for her? And I think it's glorious that the Washington Post has lost 250,000 subscriptions. I canceled my subscription years ago. Now it's the left that's going to take down the Washington Post.
No, it's amazing. You're also seeing unions do the same thing that traditionally would endorse the Democratic candidate, and they're simply saying, we're not endorsing anybody. So there does seem to be some cultural movement and political movement in these endorsements that aren't happening this year for the first time. Before we run out of time, I want to get your take on the security of this election process. We have been seeing reports of a ballot box arsonist. This guy struck drop boxes in Oregon, resulting in damaged or destroyed ballots. The Michigan Secretary of State this week has been addressing what she calls issues with electronic voting machines that may slow down, inconvenience voters. There was some bug in the system. What do you expect to see in the lead up to Tuesday? And do you think we'll have a president by November 6th?
Colorado put out the secret codes to the computer. Michigan sent out hundreds of thousands of ballots in a duplicative way. CPAC is monitoring these ballot boxes. These ballot boxes are on the street corners, vulnerable to anything. They're there day and night. This is insane. And by the way, we go all over the globe, Raymond. Nobody elects their president this way. This is a uniquely American thing. And the other thing Europe just did, they just had all their elections for the EU Parliament. They all knew the winners by that night. So to your question of will we know that night, we should. Every other democracy knows that night unless it's decided by something like the Florida recount in 2000. But we won't in America because part of these woke cities is trying to give the other side from me, every opportunity to find new ballots. And it's a real shame. In the whole world, we look like fools.
Well, I can't believe, Matt, that we are actually already battling in court. There was a battle to RFK Jr. trying to get himself off the ballots in the states. Now the Democrats have sued to keep him on the ballots. You had the Biden administration take on the state of Virginia that just wanted to purge their rolls of non-citizens. They lost that battle at the Supreme Court this week. But it troubles me that we're having a legal battle during, and I imagine after, a major election like this. This is no way to elect a president.
So I'll say it once again, 30 some odd countries, even more throughout Europe, they had their EU elections. You didn't read about anybody having to go to court. You didn't read any controversies about who was either on or off the voting rails. This is a distinctly cancerous form that's in America. And we've allowed it to metastasize because our cities are run by people. There's no bipartisanship in these cities anymore. And so, think about this. They tried to get RFK. They wouldn't allow him to get off the ballot, but yet 2 states said that Donald Trump couldn't appear on the ballot. And when Virginia went to the Supreme Court to say illegal shouldn't be on our election rules, only the Republican-appointed members, think about this, 6 members of the Supreme Court upheld the idea of the basics of voting rights. The 3 Democratic picks were fine with watering down the votes of all black people who are here, been here for a long time, to allow newcomers to water down their votes with illegal ballots. It is a shocking thing that's going on in our country.
Matt, I've got 2 minutes. Why do you think Trump has the edge with Catholic voters this election? And what do you think's driving that?
Well, one of the lists of things I didn't put on there is that they called us irredeemable as Catholics. They've said that the Knights of Columbus are a hate group. That was Kamala Harris when she have judicial picks come before her that were a member of the Knights of Columbus. They have a real animosity towards people of faith. We've seen at her rallies, people say Jesus is Lord or Jesus is King, and she says, you're at the wrong rally. Catholics will pick this next president. You know this, Raymond. They are the ultimate swing constituency. They will pick this next president. All the polls show that Donald Trump is getting their support. I think they know that he respects them as people of faith. He'll uphold the sanctity of the unborn child. He's been true to his word about the types of judges he'll pick. And I also just think Catholics, once again, they care about those staple issues, like how do we provide for our family? How are we going to pay our bills? And I think he connects with those voters.
Matt, we will leave it there. You can follow Matt Schlapp on X at @mschlapp. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Raymond.